Well, the U.S. is pulling some diplomats and their family members out of Cuba after mysterious sonic attacks against Americans on the island. That's what a State Department official now confirms to Fox News. The Associated Press first reported the State Department has ordered more than half its staffers to leave the island. The U.S. is also warning Americans against traveling to Cuba. U.S. investigators say at least 21 American diplomats and family members have come down with a strange kind of disease or symptoms, including brain damage, hearing loss, and concussions. And according to AP, one victim described waking up in a hotel room to a blaring noise that went away when he got out of bed and moved a few feet away. But when FBI agents searched hotel rooms and the homes where the attacks happened, they said they could not find any devices. Cuban officials have insisted they had nothing to do with the incidents. Josh Letterman is a foreign affairs reporter who covers the State Department and national security for the Associated Press. He co-wrote today's article on the U.S. pulling diplomats out of Cuba. Josh, great to see you. You know, you look at the relations between Cuba and the United States, and right now they are paper thin, and this is not about to help.
They were delicate to begin with, for sure, and this is going to make it much harder for that rapprochement, that warming of relations that really took form in 2015 to continue. You know, Cuba has spent the last several weeks pleading with the United States not to do exactly what it did today, saying don't be hasty, don't make rash decisions, you have no evidence this was us. And the U.S. decided today that, yes, that's true, the U.S. isn't pointing the finger at Cuba, but that Cuba has been unable to assure the U.S. government that its diplomats are safe on Cuban soil in Havana, and that therefore the U.S. has to take some pretty significant actions to protect not only American diplomats, but also tourists who could potentially be harmed by this.
Sure, they're extrapolating, saying, look, it's not just the U.S. envoys that are being affected by this. If you travel to Cuba and you're in Havana, which, by the way, was hit pretty hard by Hurricane Irma, then you know, you have the same risk. And the question becomes, if you look at Cuba's response, I know they're denying this, Josh, but it doesn't seem like there's this all-hands-on-deck mentality in Havana to try and get to the bottom of who is responsible for these attacks.
Well, the U.S. has actually praised Cuba's willingness to cooperate with this investigation, specifically the fact that the Cuban government invited the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to fly down to Havana and do some searches. But what the Cubans haven't been able to do is get to the bottom of it so that they could say to the U.S., this won't happen again. And of course, it's considered the responsibility of any host country under the Vienna Conventions to protect diplomats, make it a hospitable environment. And in the absence of Cuba being able to say, we are not going to be experiencing these things happening to American diplomats in the future, the U.S. has said this is just not sufficient.
Yeah, protect diplomats and protect tourists. I mean, you look at the analogy of Mexico. In Mexico, you know, a lot of people will say there's corruption down there. But when something happens in a tourist area of Mexico, Cabo, Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, they're all over it. They're all over it because they know that if word gets out, if press gets out that Mexico's not safe, their tourism industry goes kaput. And that's kind of happening now around the world. To Cuba, there's this indication that, you know, maybe it's not quite safe to be in Cuba, and Cuba really can't get a handle on who these, although they're trying, can't get a handle on who's behind this thing.
Certainly, the potential effects on the tourism industry in Havana, which is a lifeline for the Cuban economy, could be immense. I wouldn't rush to say that Cuba isn't doing things that they should be doing to investigate this. I mean, we have to keep in mind the best U.S. law enforcement, intelligence, the top people who investigate these kinds of crimes for the United States have not been able to figure out what's going on. So if the U.S. can't figure it out, you know, it makes sense that this is something that is so perplexing that it's been difficult for the Cubans to get a handle on as well.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. Josh Letterman, good to see you, sir. Thank you.